Morning, everyone. Canada's envoy to China draws attention of U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee Chair Marco Rubio. Yeah, we've got to start with China. And remember when little Marco was running for president against Donald Trump? Yep. Senator Marco Rubio, chair of the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee, is drawing attention to an earlier chapter in the life of Dominic Barton, now Canada's ambassador to China, as the U.S. politicians presses giant global consulting firm McKinsey & Co. on its business ties to the ruling Chinese Communist Party and state-owned enterprises. Senator Rubio has used open letters to query New York-based McKinsey & Co. on its financial relationship with Beijing and to ask whether company executives acted against U.S. economic and national security interests as an advisor to Chinese companies. According to the New York Times, McKinsey clientele in China include as many as 22 of the country's 100 largest state-owned enterprises. Mr. Barton, now Canada's envoy to Beijing, was head of McKinsey for 9 years as global managing partner. He stepped down as a global managing partner emeritus in September 2019 when Prime Minister Justin Trudeau named him ambassador. And that was after a scandal. Remember, the comments of the previous ambassador led to his removal and Mr. Barton being named. Interesting. Anyway, back to this. Upon his appointment, Mr. Barton resigned as chair of Tech Resources Limited, a Vancouver-based metals and mining giant partly owned by China Investment Corp., a state company. A member of Tech's board of directors once was a member of China's National People's Congress. Oh, isn't that a coincidence? Do you believe in those? Quote, unfortunately, Canada is no stranger to the complex influence game McKinsey plays with China, Mr. Rubio said in a statement to the Globe and Mail. Before becoming Canada's ambassador to China, Dominic Barton went from serving on the advisory board of the China Development Bank to running McKinsey's global operations. Now, McKinsey says that they don't have any knowledge of having the Chinese government or the Chinese Communist Party as clients of McKinsey. I wanted to make that clear because that's clear in the article. But at the same time, interesting, right? It's a little bit interesting. Marco Rubio's openly wondering about our ambassadors to foreign countries. And this is dailymail.co.uk, I guess .com here, but it's .co.uk in the URL bar. And they're reporting on Justin Trudeau letting Chinese troops train in Canada. I haven't seen that on the CBC or on CTV. Has anybody else, has CTV read a little one-liner on it yet? Right, a little quick throwaway line. Anyway, Daily Mail is saying Justin Trudeau invited China's People's Liberation Army to train troops in Canada, according to top-secret documents published by Canadian conservative news site, which claims, quote, they were sending spies, not just soldiers, to train. The bombshell 34-page access to information document was released by the Canadian government to Rebel News and the Globe and Mail. The two outlets published excerpts from the files Wednesday. The memos revealed that members of the PLA were scheduled to attend a military exercise at a base in Ontario in 2019. I didn't realize the Globe and Mail was included in the document release. I didn't realize they sent it to them too. Ezra Levent was speculating, Twitter, I guess, was speculating that maybe it was Tucker. Tucker Carlson was speculating that this was a disgruntled worker who wanted to expose this, who made the mistake to expose this. And I think sending it to multiple media outlets kind of reinforces that speculation a little bit. Anyway, regardless, I don't know what happened. I don't know who got the documents or exactly why. We do have the documents, and the Canadian media is lipped button tight, right? Like, they're not going to talk about this. It's very interesting. If they do, it'll be today as a throwaway line, or maybe Christmas Eve, right? Like, they'll just wait. Oh yeah, by the way, something happened with Chinese troops in Canadian soil. Moving on. Merry Christmas. Anyway, back to this. The memos revealed members of PLA were scheduled to attend a military exercise at a base in Ontario in 2019. The training was cancelled by Canada's Chief of Defence Staff, Jonathan Vance, in January 2019. But Trudeau was displeased about this cancellation because he thought it would look like a retaliation over China's detention of two Canadian nationals, the two Michaels. China arrested Michael Spavor and Michael Korvig in December 2018. Days earlier, Canada arrested Huawei's executive Meng Wanzhou. Spavor and Korvig remain behind bars in Beijing. Ezra Levent, founder of the conservative news site Rebel News, told Fox's Tucker Carlson Thursday the PLA was sending spies, not just soldiers, to the training. And here's that Tucker piece. Oh wait, here it is. I thought this was interesting. MPs last night, says Laurie Goldstein, expressed astonishment Canadian diplomats invited the Chinese People's Liberation Army to attend training exercises in Ontario. Right? Did anybody vote Trudeau out yesterday after they were astonished learning this astonishing news? Did anybody do anything about it? No? Oh, I wonder how many people have Chinese handlers, right? Like, this is, I think, a legit question to ask our leadership at this point in time. This is not a fantasy. This is not rude. This is where exactly do your loyalties lie, and do the Chinese have anything on you? Because that's concerning if they do. Here's the Tucker Carlson piece that I was saying happened. I'm not going to play it, but it's very interesting, 2 minutes. Tucker Carlson and Ezra Levant defends his points, and he says, I think that they're sending spies. He said they're definitely sending soldiers, and he mentioned generals as well. I think that's in the documents, that it's like a 2-star general that's being sent to the military college. I thought we'd go back and look at some of Trudeau's greatest hits. This is a pundit class saying, this is from May 8th, so this isn't yesterday or anything like that, but this is interesting in context. Here we go.
Malcolm Turnbull says China is a bully, and that the way for Canada to deal with China is to stand up for it instead of backing down. Is your government standing up to China, or is it backing away from China?
My responsibility as Prime Minister is to make sure that we're providing for Canadians and keeping Canadians safe. That's the job people expect me to do, and that is exactly what I'm doing. We're going to ensure that Canadians have the equipment, the supplies, the support they need to make it through this pandemic. And of course, at the same time, we will be asking difficult questions about how we're making it through this pandemic, how this came to happen, how we can learn from this. There'll be plenty of time for questions in the months to come. My focus, rightly, is on doing everything I can to help Canadians through this.
So are you standing up to China?
Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
So are you standing up to China? Thanks, everybody. Thanks very much, everyone. See ya. Bye. Walks away. Very interesting pivot, right? Like, China's a bully. What are you doing? Mr. Turnbull says that China's doing X, Y, Z. What are you doing to stand up to China? And instead of answering the question, he walks away, right? Or he pivots first. He pivots to the pandemic, and there'll be time for questions in the months to come. In May. Oh, we're trying to reopen. We can't possibly answer questions now. Oh, there's a resurgence of the seasonal flu that we're rebranding as COVID because 98% of the flu is gone. Right? Very interesting. Right? Here's another one. I'm going to show the intro to this. This is a question. Trudeau never answers the question. Never, ever answers the question. But this is again from October 7th. Again, in context, this is concerning. Here we go.
And Rideau Lakes.
On Monday, I asked the government about ties between senior Liberals like Joe Pescasolido and Raymond Chan and individuals charged in a gangland shooting with the Chinese Communist Party. Now we've learned that the architect of a heavily armed illegal casino operation in Markham has twice had FaceTime with this Prime Minister, and surprise, he also has ties to the CCP. Canadians deserve to know, is the Prime Minister's proximity to the Chinese Communist Party elites in Canada affecting his ability to protect Canadian interests?
Honourable Prime Minister.
I listened to his answer trying to, because I usually put up my little black screen and I type the question and then we listen to him, but it's like nails on a chalkboard and he never answers the question. Excuse me. He never answers the question, and he never stays on topic. He just pivots, right? He'll pivot to whatever and try and blame the Conservatives for doing something or other, and it never really gets answered. So I'll just let you hear that on October 7th, he was asked about China and the influence that China bears on him and his cabinet and et cetera. And the pivot is a pivot. He never answers the question. I mean, and they don't answer questions they don't like. And anything about China is a question they don't like, right? Canadian soldiers no longer training Chinese troops, Defense Minister says 17 hours ago, right? Oh, yeah, well, we put a stop to that, a couple of days ago when Rebel News broke that story at 2:15 in the afternoon. Ha. Yep. Here's the Nuremberg Code that I was talking about. Here's Kevin McEachran, and he says, it's 2020 and it's frightening that no one seems to care about the Nuremberg Code. Let's walk through how many of these tenets are violated each day with PCR testing of asymptomatic people and quarantining them on results of such opaque tools. Okay, so I'm going to leave the China stuff now because it's a big story, but everybody's kind of covering that story. Again, I don't think, it's like a glacier moving to get Trudeau out of here. It's very slow and nobody seems motivated to do anything. Why? Well, I guess because it seems like they're all playing for the same team, right? And up until now, we didn't know exactly who that same team was. It was kind of the globalists, right? But it looks like the globalists are actually the CCP Chinese. That's what it seems to look like. So is this going to blow everything up? Maybe eventually. It might lead to that. But if it does blow everything up, how many of our politicians are compromised? How many of them have a vested interest in this not blowing up? Because if it blows up, it means their careers are done too. right? Like that's something to consider. How bad is it? How bad is it? How far down does this go? And is it just direct CCP influence, direct Chinese influence, or is it UN influence, WHO influence? I don't know. How deep does this go? And how deep does China's influence in the WHO go? If it's the WHO directing the municipalities and the public health officers, how do we break that chain? How do we fix that problem? Because that is a problem, and it's harder to draw the line than the politicians in this scandal. And look at what's happening with this scandal. Goose egg, right? So we'll see. I mean, the conservatives are gonna saber rattle, but they seem more interested in saber rattling about other things. Okay, so getting into the Nuremberg Code and PCR testing, we're going to talk about mandatory vax. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. But first, let's keep this in mind. Okay, here's the code. It says the 10 points of the code were given in the section of the verdict entitled "Permissible Medical Experiments." The voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. Voluntary consent. It's not voluntary if you're being threatened. It's not voluntary if they say if you want a job and if you want to come into the store to get your groceries and if you want to travel, because and if you want to visit your family or visit your mom or visit your sister or brother, you have to get this vaccine. But it's up to you to make that assessment. That's not voluntary. Okay, back to this. Number 2, the experiment should be such as to yield fruitful results for the good of society, unprocurable by other methods or means of study, and not random and unnecessary in nature. My question is, we're going into a 28-day lockdown starting Monday. Okay, that takes us through Christmas and New Year's. And that's red. That's level red. We're going into the level red right before Christmas. This is cruel and unusual punishment for an economy, for a population. And it's not borne out in the data. I've shown you the data, but the data doesn't matter. They're doing this anyway. So at what point, what is the goal of this lockdown? The Toronto lockdown was it's like I said yesterday, if you're losing weight, like if you have a goal of weight loss, I'm going to try and lose 10 pounds. If your goal is I'm losing weight, you're not doing anything, right? You're torturing yourself for being fat is what you're doing. Or for believing that you're fat. Okay. And you may be fat. I don't know. I don't know you, but that's often what that means. You don't actually have a meetable goal. You just have a torture thing to go through. You just have bad feelings about food, right? And these have bad feelings about the citizens. We're just being tortured with no real end in sight. It's not measurable. What are we going to do? Squash the cases to zero? It's almost zero anyway. Like, we're getting more cases. Oh no, more cases. What's happening? Not many people are going into the hospital. Where's the flu? Disappeared. Cured. And yet, right? We're still going through this facade, and we're going to get to the flaw of the PCR testing as well. But what is the goal of the 28 days? First, where's the science that backs up 28 days is necessary for this? 2, because 28 days didn't work in Toronto and Peel, they just went into a further lockdown. Oh, 28 days didn't work. You know what you get? You get gray. You're not allowed to visit your neighbors or your family or your friends. And you can't go open your business. And if you have a barbecue, we're going to have riot police there, right? Like, this is the level we're at now. This is not appropriate. Not appropriate at all. We're way around the bend. And I was talking about that yesterday. Okay, number 3. The experiment should be so designed and based on the results of an animal experimentation and a knowledge of the natural history of the disease or other problem under the study that the anticipated results will justify the performance of the experiment. So it shouldn't be modeled. We shouldn't be looking at models. The experiment should be so conducted as to avoid all unnecessary physical and mental suffering and injury. 5, no experiment should be conducted when there is an a priori reason to believe that death or disabling injury will occur, except perhaps in those experiments where the experimental physicians also serve as subjects. So if you're testing yourself, you can do that if you want to, I guess. 6, the degree of risk to be taken should never exceed that determined by the humanitarian importance of the problem to be solved by the experiment. 7, proper preparations should be made and adequate facilities provided to protect the experimental subjects against even remote possibility of injury, disability, or death. 8, the experiment should be conducted but only by scientifically qualified persons. The highest degree of skill and care should be required throughout all stages of experimentation of the experiment of those who conduct or engage in the experiment. During the course of the experiment, the human subject should be at liberty to bring the experiment to an end. I'd like to bring the experiment to an end now. And if he has reached the physical or mental state where continuation of the experiment seems to him to be impossible. Yep. During the course of the experiment, the scientist in charge must be prepared to terminate the experiment at any stage if he has probable cause to believe, in the exercise of the good faith, superior skill, and careful judgment required of him, that a continuation of the experiment is likely to result in injury, disability, or death to the experimental subject. So that's interesting. Here's more context for Nuremberg Code. What's in these vaccines? Australia's billion-dollar coronavirus vaccine is scrapped after trial participants returned HIV false positives, according to, causing order for 51 million doses of the homegrown jab to be terminated. Here's the article. Again, it's a UK Daily Mail. And Australia's billion-dollar coronavirus vaccine is scrapped after trial participants returned HIV false positives. HIV, I think that's like HIV positive. I don't know how else to phrase that, but that doesn't... HIV false positives? I don't know, it seems odd. It seems clumsy. Causing order for 51 million jabs. University of Queensland has abruptly ended the trials for the coronavirus vaccine. The Australian government has secured a $1 billion deal for 51 million doses. So yeah, they kind of jumped the gun on this. I don't think there's anything little there that I want to show you. Here's Bell's palsy. This is Pfizer. Oh, I wanted to mention that this is not the Pfizer vaccine. This is different. That's what I wanted to mention here. This is a different vaccine. This is created in Australia and not the Pfizer vaccine. So I want to make that distinction very clear. But it's still concerning. Like, why are we rushing these things out? Here's a result of the Pfizer vaccine, and these are Bell's palsy victims, I suppose. 4 Pfizer vaccine volunteers developed Bell's palsy. Bell's palsy is a condition that causes a weakness or paralysis of the muscles in the face. The condition causes one side of your face to droop or become stiff. I don't know if this is pictures of the actual 4. There's on my phone there were 4 pictures. Here there's 3. So apologies if this is not the actual group of people, but that's concerning, right? That's concerning. They're the same 4 pictured in the article here. So I believe that those are the 4 who did get Bell's palsy. Here's Rosemary Barton says, asked how Health Canada approved Pfizer before the FDA. Dr. Sharma, chief medical advisor, jokes, "We're just better." Goes on to explain they've been working around the clock, not a race to approve, a race to beat the virus. But the vaccine doesn't stop the transmission of the virus and doesn't stop your ability to get the virus. It just limits your symptoms, but it gets you sick on both doses, right? So unbelievable. Here's Milhouse Van Houten, and he says, it's called seasonality. Don't be fooled by this. Andrew Johnson, he's a blue checkmark CTV News guy, and he says, if all goes according to the plan laid out today by Dr. Bonnie Henry, the spring of 2021 could be a glorious time indeed. Remember the springtime, our springtime, where they opened everything up and we had parks back and things? It's seasonal. This is the flu.
We're focused on saving lives, protecting those people most at risk. And we have enough vaccine that we expect to receive between now and the end of March to cover those key populations. And that's about 300 and 380,000 people. We do expect by the end of March and going into the spring, there'll be more vaccine products and more of the vaccines available to more rapidly spread out to people in the community. And I expect that this will happen very rapidly in the spring. And that means we'll have vaccines that can be delivered through those more usual mechanisms that we have through pharmacies, through our family physician offices, through public health clinics. So that's what we have to look forward to. It is at that point when we have vaccine widely distributed in our communities where many people are protected that we will be able to stop this pandemic.
I just believe that the vaccine is going to have very little to do with the virus going away in the spring of 2021, because that's just what happens usually after flu season, right? Here's a great question. It says, we're being told we will face travel restrictions if we don't get the COVID vaccine. If it's that dangerous, why is travel being allowed now? Why are we landing flights from infected areas, and everywhere is infected, into Canada if it's that dangerous, right? And the vaccine has not been tested appropriately or fully, and having Health Canada and FDA approve this vaccine and roll it out so quickly is just really concerning. It's unbelievable that we're being ushered into this, and again, it feels without our consent. Here's Anthony Fury. He says, an informative piece by Sun Laurie on the stats about serious adverse reaction to vaccines. So this is just about your everyday vaccine. It says it's a given that relatively small number of Canadians are going to experience severe adverse reactions to COVID-19 vaccines. This is nothing new. It happens with all vaccines. While a vast majority of people who take them experience no adverse symptoms or minor ones, a small number will experience serious and debilitating problems. The Public Health Agency of Canada reports that in 6 months, pre-COVID period from January to June alone last year, there were 115 adverse reactions to vaccines described as serious and 1,642 described as non-serious. Of particular concern to parents is that based on last year's data, 65% of serious adverse vaccine events occurred in children under 2 years of age. COVID-19 vaccines will not be administered to children until further safety testing is done. Nobody under 12, I believe, has been tested with the Pfizer vaccine. Back to this. When severe adverse reactions to vaccines occur, it's very difficult to sue drug companies for damages or even the additional expenses a family faces if one of their members has a debilitating response to a vaccine. And I'll just leave it there. But like, this is something that happens as a run-of-the-mill, usual vaccines that are rolled out. Like, there's a reason that people choose to not take vaccines that have been around for a long time. There have been people who have had adverse reactions to those vaccines, and these people have seen it. And there's nothing wrong with that choice. In fact, that choice is backed up by our Constitution and other laws that underpin that. And it's very interesting to see all
Ich werde jetzt hier live während meiner Wortmeldung einen Corona-Test durchführen, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren.
Pause. It's very interesting to see all those laws just thrown out the window. This is an Austrian parliament, and an Austrian MP tries a government-funded quick coronavirus test on a glass of Coke live in Parliament, and the test comes back positive for COVID-19. Now, I was hoping he was going to put the positive test up on a projector or something like that, but he doesn't do that. So I found the original, and they're here. And in the comments, it says the reveal is 4:59, where he says the test is positive, but he's just holding it up. So it's kind of like, I don't know, right? And he's like, yes, it's positive. I don't know. Okay, maybe. So I can't confirm or deny that, but I thought it was interesting that a glass of Coke, like we've seen papayas and goats tested for COVID-19, dogs come back tested for COVID-19 positive, right? So this is an interesting situation. And you can see him swab like open the package of the swab and put it in the Coke and then put it on the testing pad. So it's an interesting article, or it's an interesting video that doesn't have a translation. So sorry about that. If anybody speaks Austrian and can confirm, that would be great. Yeah. Here is Manitoba. It says, this is talking about how they cycle to 40 cycles for their PCR testing. And this is in the third paragraph here. It says, the genetic signal is doubled approximately 40 times. Those samples with no detectable COVID-2 after 40 cycles are considered negative. Those samples with less than 40 cycles are considered positive. The number of cycles at which a sample becomes positive is called the cycle threshold, or CT. Through samples with higher CT values have less virus, they still represent a true positive, okay? Except that here is Portugal and their courts, and came out with this. Judges in Portugal highlight more than debatable reliability of COVID tests. The judges' deliberations were nonetheless loud and clear, set out over 3 pages. The panel looked at the reliability of RT-PCR tests due to the enforced confinement of the holidaymakers in question because one had tested positive. Said the ruling dated November 11th, in view of current scientific evidence, this test shows itself to be unable to determine beyond reasonable doubt that such positivity corresponds, in fact, to the infection of a person by the SARS-CoV-2 virus. RT-PCR tests, standing for polymerase chain reaction tests, are performed by amplifying samples through repetitive cycles. The number of cycles of such amplification results in a greater or lesser reliability of such tests, and the problem is that this reliability shows itself in terms of scientific evidence as more than debatable. It's here the ruling cites a study conducted by some of the leading European and world specialists in this material, published by the Oxford academic at the end of September. At a cycle threshold of 25, about 70% of samples remain positive in cell culture. In a CT of 30, 20% of samples remain positive. In a CT of 35, 3% of samples remain positive. In a CT above 35, no samples remain positive, infectious in the culture. This means that if a person has a positive PCR test at a threshold cycle of 35 or higher, as happens in most laboratories in the US and Europe, the chance of a person being infected is less than 3%. The probability of a person receiving a false positive is 97% or higher. The judges stressed that they were unable to find any recommendations or rulings on the number of amplifications used in tests carried out by Portuguese health authorities. So Portuguese health authorities aren't telling anybody, but Manitoba's telling them. And Manitoba's saying all of our tests are false positives. And Manitoba's on a lockdown harder than anyone in Canada. And I think that Ontario is on the way there. I think that they're trying to lock down Ontario just like Manitoba. And they're starting. Like the screws are turning now. Guelph, like I said, Guelph's going into a red, 28-day red. Unbelievable. Until January. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Back to this. A business associate, this is Patty B, says, a business associate just said today she personally knows of 3 families who were scheduled for COVID testing. 1 family in Alberta, 1 in BC, 1 in Ontario, but were never tested. All 3 were subsequently sent positive test results. Tell me the numbers are legit. And here's another one. Coworker was in a car lineup, Red Deer, for testing, left after 45 minutes without getting an actual test. Got a text later that evening saying he had tested positive. Cha-ching. Media statement regarding school closures for next week. This is Windsor in Windsor, okay? The following statements can be attributed to Dr. Waleed Ahmed, Medical Officer of Health for the Windsor-Essex County Medical Unit. Due to the rapid rise in COVID-19 cases in Windsor and Essex County and the evidence of ongoing community transmission, I'm issuing a Section 22 order under the Health Protection and Promotion Act that requires all elementary and secondary school students to transition to online remote learning effective Monday, December 14th. This order will be in place for 1 week, December 14th to 18th, which will bring students into the school holiday break. An extension of this order may be considered based on COVID-19 epidemiological data for Windsor and Essex County. They're superseding the provinces and the education minister's statements. They're going over his head and they're enacting these lockdowns now. And this idea of online learning. Did you hear about the 11-year-old who shot himself in his Zoom class? I mean, like, it almost makes me throw up just to say it. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. I'm just so sad. And doing that to kids, it's just evil. 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 You can't do that to children. You can't do that to kids. And that's not education. I would pull my children as soon as that happened. If they say we're going to, and I told they came out with this snow day thing. So snow days are changing. And now if it's a snow day, the kids are expected to log in via Zoom or via like Google Classroom or whatever. And I sent a tweet or whatever talking about how if there's a snow day, I'm expected to work. My wife is expected to work. The care of the children can sometimes be kind of done between parents, etc., but often is done by grandparents that live nearby. And the grandparents don't have 4 computers for the other kids that they'll look after during that time too. And it's like, you kind of do what you have to do. You're not adhering to what the school board decides that you have to do because the weather's snowed, right? Like often people have to get to work, have to get to do whatever it is they have to do during the day, regardless, right? Of the snow day that your children get. So the school just kind of unilaterally saying, well, you've got to put your kids on a computer by this time, and and you have to be logged in. You have to be doing the schoolwork, and it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate, in my opinion. I think that we are failing our kids by letting this happen. I mean, we're failing our kids by letting them be masked in school. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what's going on. But this is unnecessary, and it shouldn't be able to stand. Like the health unit shouldn't be able to shut down schools a week before Christmas break. The testing that they're finding, they're testing asymptomatic people. They're testing healthy people. They're testing healthy people with a flawed test to shut down schools. They're not doing this by mistake. Make no mistake, okay? Government rewrites Election Act that includes weird clause allowing Chief Electoral Officer to cancel voting in any riding due to the pandemic. Oh, looks like it's going to go a little blue. We'll just cancel that. We'll do the Toronto ones. We'll do Mississauga. We can get through it there. But all of those rural ones, there's an outbreak. You can't go voting today. I'm sorry, guys. And they're going to do 3 days. I've got more information about that. Ooh, I think it's going to be a long one today. Here's another one. Tories end filibuster, allow assisted dying bill to be put to final vote in the Commons. Do you know who didn't break their filibuster? The Liberals. The Liberals didn't break their filibuster for we, and the Tories just let it go. Just let it go. Great job, guys. Great job. I'm sure your puppet masters are very happy with you, right? Like there's a little kabuki theater. We made it last a little, a day and a half, 2 days. Okay, I guess we'll let you guys vote on it. We made our point. Yeah, sure. Brian Lilly says, Hudson Bay is taking Ford Nation government to court over the lockdowns of retail in Toronto, and Peel calling the government's measures unreasonable and unfair. Company says they have been left with no choice but to go to court. Full statement in the photos. So yeah, I think this is an interesting development. It's bigger than Mr. Skelly, but without Mr. Skelly, I probably HBC does this anyway, honestly. Anyway, back to this. The Ontario government's health data shows that retail shoppers are not contributing to the COVID-19 spread in any significant way. On behalf of the thousands of large and small retailers in Toronto and Peel, we've been left with no choice but to ask the court to recognize the unfairness of the current situation and the need for a fair and evidence-based solution that puts health and safety first and doesn't jeopardize the livelihoods of thousands of retail workers or the future of many businesses. I mean, who would have thought that HBC would be the champion that people were looking for, eh? Figure that one out. Last week, we signed an open letter along with 46 other retailers of various sizes to advocate for a 25% capacity limit on all retailers across the province as a means to achieving better public health outcomes with less economic fallout and unfairness. Even this is just ridiculous, unnecessary. Back to this. The decision to close some retailers in these regions has not achieved public health objectives. Rather, it has potentially increased health risks by funneling more shoppers into fewer, increasingly crowded stores. Public health evidence regarding the importance of physically spacing and other health measures supports doing the complete opposite. Sorry, getting myself out of the way is annoying. The government's approach is unreasonable and unfair, does not support our shared public health objectives, and is causing undue stress and hardships to thousands of retail employees and businesses across the region. The situation is dire and untenable for thousands of retailers, but it's not too late for the government to make a better decision for Ontario, the local economy, public health, and the millions of citizens who live or work in Toronto and Peel. I unfortunately don't think they're going to get any kind of relief soon because I think Doug Ford's done for the year. Maybe they've got, I think they end on the 16th, whatever day that is. The 16th is next Wednesday or something like that. And then they're not back until maybe the 25th, or is that could be federal. I saw the 25th to be back and I thought, man, you lazy people. People are losing their businesses, their livelihoods, and you guys are taking an extended Christmas break. Ridiculous. Anyway, walk down College Street in Toronto, says Ryan O'Connor, in Toronto, or in Little Italy. It's a ghost town at night where once was a thriving retail and restaurant shop. Family-run places keep closing while the municipal officials who shut them down keep calling for subsidies instead of safe reopenings. Yeah, that's my issue with Dan Kelly. That's my issue with a whole bunch of the smart people, or the people who are supposed to be helping us navigate this. They're not being impacted by the loss of revenue or the loss of money, the loss of business, the loss of economic activity, but they're dictating that people shut things down. Oh, you have to get your kid on remote learning. Remote learning? What? No. That's not school. That's not the same thing. And having all of the businesses shut down. Here's Jonathan Kingstone says, from Toronto's iconic Sicilian Sidewalk Cafe facing closure after 6 decades, 60 years in business, and Toronto's lockdowns are shutting them down because people can't go. People aren't allowed to go. You can't go and patronize these businesses. All the office buildings are shut. I mean, cheapers creepers. We're destroying ourselves over this. We're letting our leaders destroy us over this. BC woman ticketed for refusing to wear a mask, belligerent behavior. So I think you can be ticketed maybe for belligerent behavior, but not if you're being harassed about wearing a mask. There are exemptions. I don't understand. I do understand. I know what's going on. But I'm saying that it's very interesting, people who are ignoring this kind of stuff, Papers, Please, and the Mask Brigade, and the soft laws that are turning into hard laws, right? Like, if you're out wearing a mask, you are not invisible. You are one person who is, an anti-masker, probably an anti-vaxxer. You're the one who's driving this pandemic, right? And it's like, dude, chill. $1,500 fines on the spot. Of course, this is for COVID criminals, also known as tax-paying citizens not obeying the rules, whereas actual gun-toting criminals and gangsters would never be subject to something this outrageous for being an actual effing criminal. Welcome to New Canada, and this is in Quebec. So very interesting stuff. They're making illegal your regular everyday life. They're making what you do illegal. This is terrible. This is just awful. This is Ms. Freeland answering Mr. Poilievre saying that there's nothing nefarious about a preloaded stimulus. I just want access to Canadians' bank accounts so we don't have complete insolvency in Canada. Here she is. I'm paraphrasing.
Again, the Conservatives are misconstruing my words. It almost makes me wonder if they're doing it on purpose. The fact is, there is nothing dystopian or even very complicated about the idea of a preloaded stimulus. We all know that local small businesses are the heart of our economy. We all also know that because of physical distancing, we are unable to patronize them now.
How does that work exactly, Ms. Freeland? Because of physical distancing, we can't go into small businesses, but Costco's okay, lineups outside are okay, Walmart's okay, Zayres is okay, all of the grocery stores are okay, but we can't patronize small businesses because people are too stupid and they'll congregate together in small businesses. What are you talking about?
That is why, as soon as it is safe for our economy to fully reopen, our government is looking for ways to encourage Canadians to support our local small business.
The honourable member for Carleton.
The problem is, by the time the economy is safe and open for business again, none of those businesses are going to be available to open. So the big giveaways are going to be to, you guessed it, the same people who've got all the other giveaways every single time. Here's the Atlantic provinces calling on Trudeau to delay and reanalyze his costly second carbon tax. Note their concerns over energy poverty. And very interesting what's happening here. Dan McTeague has been covering this second carbon tax, the clean fuel tax. I'm not going to get into it too deeply here, but they're pricing you out of your home too. There are a lot of people who, if the government said, you know what, you don't have to pay for heating, we'll pay for that. They'd be quite happy to give up their freedom for that. Quite happy. I don't have to pay rent and I don't have to pay heating and I get free Wi-Fi. To the government approved websites you do, right? Apparently this person's the president of CBC. She lives in Brooklyn. And somebody said, this isn't a big story. Everybody knew that her movie empire place, her movie studios in Brooklyn. And I was like, what? So yeah, apparently the president of CBC looks like that. Not shocked. And lives in Brooklyn. So, you know, I thought, why pay rent? Why pay rent? Why not just like set up your wares like anywhere, right? Like you could just have a little, everybody could have like a kiosk like this. Welcome to New Canada, right? Like, wow, they're destroying our culture. They're destroying our economy. They're wearing us down on purpose. It's not by accident. It's public data about the PCR tests. It's public. It's not unknown. It's public data about the death rates, the all-cause mortality rates. It's public data. These people, the numbers don't matter. The number of people in hospital in Guelph is 8, and we're shutting down. We're going to red. We're destroying our economy. We're destroying our culture, for nothing. It's unbelievable. The Ford government is extending all COVID-19 orders currently in force under the Reopening Ontario Act until January 20th. I thought they had to re-up every 28 days or something like that. January 20th is more than 28 days from now. How are they doing this? The Ford government says the extension will support the safe delivery of healthcare and critical services until vaccines are approved and widely available. We're just staying in lockdown forever. Sorry about your luck, guys. We're in lockdown until we're in lockdown until until you can't take it anymore. This is interesting. Water joins gold and oil for the first time as a traded commodity. I can't see that going badly. Obviously, I'm kidding, right? Like, obviously, water shouldn't be a commodity on the New York Stock Exchange. Water is if you die if you don't have water for 3 days. It's not like you could go without water for a week or so and it'd be okay, right? Like, this is a basic human right. And there was places in the States trying to ban rainwater collection. If they can make people believe that masks don't work, they can make people believe that the rainwater is poison. Back to this. Trudeau Liberals push for mail-in voting changes ahead of the next election. Where have I heard that before? It's not safe to vote, right? It's not safe to vote. Come on, man. So we'll finish with the U.S. I was going to start with the U.S. election, but I thought, man, if I start with that, I'm going to talk about everything. And this is Canada Poly, so we start with Canadian politics here. Here's an interesting thing. Massive uprising, legal civil war in Pennsylvania. PA House joins Texas in the suit against Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Georgia. So Texas, yesterday I said about 15 states. Now it's up to 22 states, and Pennsylvania, the House, of Pennsylvania has joined Texas's lawsuit against the Secretary of State and the electors, I suppose, of Pennsylvania. And that's going to be interesting. I think things are going to happen. And, you know, I think I've said on Twitter that I don't think that there's somebody who's going to come in and save us. But an outside force pointing out that there's a whole bunch of Chinese corruption and proving that Dominion machines flip votes. And I mean, Dominion machines are used to place Doug Ford, Justin Trudeau, Aaron O'Toole, used in municipalities across Canada, used in Ontario elections, New Brunswick elections, Alberta elections. There's some very serious concerns that would be raised if it was proven that Dominion flipped votes. And this lawsuit isn't specifically about flipping votes. It's more complicated than that, and it's beyond the scope of this podcast to get into. But very interesting stuff is happening here. Sidney Powell mentions Canada. I think Sidney Powell is going to be the 2024 candidate if they all pull this off. Maybe after Trump's done, let's say that Trump will campaign for Sidney Powell. That'd be funny. But anyway, she mentions Canada here, and I'm not going to play it just because it's Fox News and I might get dinged for that. But she mentions Canada in the foreign interference in their election specifically. So along with UK, very interesting. And the person of the year of 2020 is obviously Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Obviously. I mean, there wasn't anybody more important. It's not like anybody brought like peace to the Middle East or anything like that, right? Nope. Not like that. Didn't happen. Forget about it. You know, these guys are champions for inclusivity and equity. Critical race theory, these guys right here. She's not even... It's funny how convenient she uses her skin color when it's convenient, right? And I think that it's very interesting that they're going for they went for the black vote when Miss Harris has Indian heritage and Jamaican heritage. That's not traditional black African American. Like, it's very different. So I think that it's really interesting and not sincere. Like, it's kind of true, right? In that she has a darker skin tone. But like, why lie like that right off the hop just to garner votes, right? Like, just wild, just absolutely brazen, right? Just brazen. They didn't get Joe Biden's eyes right either. His one eye closes a lot more than that. Like, his eyes are really, really open there. But usually this eye, I was gonna poke. I can't point, but the right eye. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The one closest to Kamala is a lot more closed. Should be a lot more closed. Okay, I'm long here. I'm rambling. Watch that lawsuit, the Texas lawsuit that's being taken up by the Supreme Court that the House in Pennsylvania just joined, and Alaska just joined this morning too. So they might even be up to 23 states. If 23 states are saying you're wrong, and the Supreme Court hears that, that's compelling. That's not like there's one state that's saying you're wrong and everybody else is like, I don't know. You guys figure it out. Everybody, not everybody, but a large majority of states are on board. And now it's to the point where you have to question, why aren't the other states on board? What do they see that all of these states that are joining the lawsuit are missing to stay out of it, right? I don't know. Very interesting. Or maybe it's just that deep. How do we find out in Canada how deep it goes? I don't know. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful day.